Welcome back to the Atom Experiment. I've got another expansive episode for you exploring how your network can unlock more of your potential. I'm honored to be joined by author Thomas Kriese to discuss the powerful concepts from his new book, The Inner Circle Effect. Thomas has spent his career working with incredible organizations around the world, unlocking their growth by building vibrant ecosystems of customers and partners. When he's not writing, traveling, biking, or spending time with his family, Thomas spends his time helping people find the value of reconnecting to their old and cold connections. In this episode, we dive into the importance of being intentional about the people you surround yourself with and how having the right archetypes in your inner circle can supercharge your growth and ability to achieve your goals. Thomas opens up about his own journey of overcoming that feeling stuck and being in the valley, as he talks about, by being able to tap into his network, and how the phenomenon of mimetic desire means we subconsciously adopt the behaviors of those closest to us, which is why it's important we pay attention to who we surround ourselves with. We also discuss the power of rekindling old connections with no agenda other than the gratitude and how those weak ties can open up valuable opportunities. So I hope you're ready to be inspired and uplevel your own inner circle, take agency over your future, and unlock your full potential. Let's do this. All right. Hey, Thomas, it's so good to see you here today. Thank you for joining me on the Atom Experiment.
It's great to be here, Adam. Any chance to be able to spend some time with you talking about interesting things is a good time spent.
Oh my gosh, you're too kind. Well, you're here today. We could talk about a number of things, but you did just write a book, The Inner Circle Effect, talking about the importance of the people that we surround ourselves with and the impact that they have on our growth and potential. So we're going to use that sort of as our framing today for coming into the stuff, but we'll see where we end up.
Sounds like an awesome plan. Look forward to it.
All right. So I have to ask, what inspired the book in the first place?
What inspired the book? So there's a variation of this question that I answer sometimes, and it is, how long did it take you to write this book? And it basically took my whole life to be able to figure out what I wanted to say. And then it was a very short time for me to be able to go, oh, that's what it is. And the genesis of the book was really this feeling of being stuck, sort of the status quo. And how can I change this? Reading all kinds of self-help books, listening to all kinds of therapy on audiobook. And I realized that it really comes down to the people that you surround yourself with. And I began to realize in talking with other folks that for the most part, we're not really intentional about who we spend time with. It sort of happens. And so when you get to a point of being stuck, it's really looking around and taking an audit of the people that you surround yourself with and realizing I need to change the people around me because of all kinds of effects that are going to flow on from it. But once you change the people you surround yourself with, your circumstances change, your opportunities change. And so the inner circle effect is really paying attention to those 5 kinds of people that you want to have around you so that you can harness the power of your closest connections and make amazing changes to your circumstances.
I love it. So we're going to have a ton to talk about. But first, maybe we should start with some definitions.
Sure.
So in the book, you talk about the inner circle and the inner circle effect. Can you tell us the difference between those two?
Sure, the difference between those two. So the inner circle, I refer to the actual people that are around you. So the inner circle, in this case, I'm talking about 5 different types of people, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But it's actually the, if you will, the bodies that you spend the most time with. The inner circle effect is what happens when that you have that alchemy of the different personalities and personality traits that they bring to your inner circle, how that actually changes the things that happen around you. For instance, if you have a really strong mentor, which is one of the archetypes, the mentor is the one who has been there, done that, and is able to sort of fast forward you into an area of achievement that you otherwise couldn't have been at. If you don't have that mentor, then you might be muddling through a little bit more. So the inner circle is having the mentor. The inner circle effect is what they actually do to have you get closer to what you're trying to achieve.
Right on. And so now let's go into your story. And you mentioned you reached a point where you felt stuck.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about like what does being stuck feel like to you?
Yeah. So my stuckness was a result of many different things. And part of it was that I had been in a marriage that's finally ended. And so the all of the activity that had been focused on trying to end it was over with. So it was sort of in the calm after the storm. I was trying to figure, okay, now that I've got all this time and this opportunity and this energy to make things happen, what do I do now? Where do I put this energy? It's this, I want to say it's sort of this valley in between two peaks. And the two peaks are, on the one hand, so many opportunities and possibilities is one of the peaks. And the other peak is so much energy to go and attack that. And then the valley that I felt trapped in between was, I don't know which one of these to tackle first. So many opportunities and so much potential to do it, but is that the peak that I want to do? It was that sense of I needed to have something to sort of motivated me out, and I needed to have the people around me to say, like the motivator, to be able to say, Thomas, you're so much more than this. Quit your wallowing around and just go forward. And so that stuckness was not being happy with the status quo and realizing that I could not lift myself out of it. I had to rely on people in my network to be able to do so. And to be honest, it was really hard for me to show the vulnerability, to feel like I could show the vulnerability and still have that acceptance from the people I reached out to and asked for help from. But once I realized and got the first tastes of that reciprocity, that I built up social capital with these people for years in the network that I had, which was really strong in the past, these what I call now old and cold connections. When I started reaching out to these people, they were all happy to hear from me. And they all remembered the best parts of me that at that moment when I was reaching out, I don't know if that was the first thing that I was thinking about myself, but engaging the conversation was all of a sudden, oh yeah, I'm so much better than this. I remember kicking ass and taking names when we were working together, or that we did all this amazing stuff together. And it's that kind of uplift that comes from reaching out to connections that I really resonated with and got me out of that stuck place and started moving in a direction. And once you start moving in a direction, you can move in any direction.
Ooh, it's beautiful. Now what I'm wondering is, you're in that valley. Were there other pieces of the puzzle that you tried on before you went down the path of, oh, you know what? It seems like the people are the big piece for me.
Oh, let me see if I can pull up my Audible receipts for all the books that I consulted, because, I knew that I just needed to read one more thing and that would have the answer. And finally, someone put it in a very succinct way to me. They said, every time you read and don't act, every time you think about it and don't act, every time you do anything but act, you're just building up potential. And you, Thomas, have so much potential you could explode like an atom bomb. Just fricking do something. And so that was the all the things that I tried. I listened to Audible books in psychology, around networking, around sociology, around understanding the human brain, about understanding how we actually do networking. I got really smart on this stuff, if I say so myself, but I wasn't doing anything with it. And then I went and I took classes from pros about, well, this is how you do X, and this is how you do Y, and this is how you do Z. And it was awesome because I knew exactly how to do X, Y, and Z, but I didn't do it. So I was building up all of this potential. And that was where I think I was probably really primed once I finally got somebody who kicked me in the butt to say, just do it. That got me down the path and got me unstuck. But I needed to have a person, not an unknown stranger that was imparting their wisdom in an asynchronous way, to get me to do it.
Yeah, it's a great reminder of how much we're surrounded with these just constant dopamine hits that make us feel like we're doing something, like we're moving forward. And that's not to say that being still, which is important to have that space for some of the stuff to kind of coalesce and settle, and acquiring knowledge and getting curious about new things isn't important. But what I'm hearing is that eventually you get to a point where you've built up so much of that stuff that it actually needs to go somewhere. And in my case, what ends up happening is it goes from being a positive thing that's motivating and inspiring and into a negative thing that ends up, I don't know if you can go somewhere besides the valley, but like you start digging a hole in the valley and you go a little bit deeper, and not in a good way.
Yeah, you start tying your feet to the valley floor, and then you start planting plants around you and building walls and all of those things that are not good to have happen at the valley floor. And I kind of think of it that if I was driving down a highway towards doing something, I probably passed about 5 or 6 exits to actually getting off the highway and doing a thing, 5 or 6 exits beyond what I should have. And you mentioned something earlier about those dopamine hits that we get, and I think that was another thing that I caught myself doing, was talking about writing this book and not actually doing the writing. And so I got that cheap dopamine thrill of sharing with somebody that I was going to be writing a book. And they were just like, oh, that's amazing. And I was able to go, oh, that feels so good. I don't have to write it just yet. I'm going to tell somebody else I'm going to do it. And you get the same kind of thing. So much different than when you finally put your craft out there, and all the, oh my goodness, I can't believe I finally did it. And the reaction from people who I won't say endorse, but give you a big hurrah for actually achieving it by, oh my goodness, more than 2 people bought my book. I knew my mom and my brother were a sure thing, so I'd have at least 2 sales and be able to say I got royalties. But holy smokes, more and more people have actually bought it than I ever anticipated. And it's thrilling to know that the ideas that I was doing sort of in one-offs of coffees and gatherings of friends can now actually be accessible to more than just the people that I run into on a semi-regular basis.
So there's 2 things I want to touch on. One is, it sounds like there was a specific person, maybe you labeled them as your motivator, that kind of came along and was like, I imagine them now being a passenger in that car, and they're like, hey, we need to take this exit. Not even we need to. You're going to take this exit, Thomas. Where did that person come from?
That person was someone that I'd been dating for a long time. Her name's Laura, and she was really I kind of stacked the decks on this because she had a background in therapy. Although she wasn't my therapist, and we had an agreement that she would not therapize me. She was really good at being able to call me on my shit. And I will always and forever be appreciative of that role that she played for me. And I have to share that there was another piece that I would say that he did it posthumously, but my dad passed away a year ago. And in doing so, I know that was a huge jolt for me. It was sort of a delayed jolt of dealing with the grief that comes from a parent passing. But as I was assessing all of this potential, my dad would call it polishing the knob on the cathedral. That I would obsess over something and not actually finish it or launch it or push it out there for other people to enjoy, because I just sit there and reword it and maybe do another illustration, those kinds of things. So I had that spirit of my dad, who was pushing me out of inaction and into action, to finally stop polishing the knob on the cathedral and just open the door.
It's a wonderful gift that he was able to leave with you even afterwards.
Yeah.
So we've got your motivator, Laura. Where did the rest of your inner circle come from?
Oh, the rest of my inner circle is a mix mash of all kinds of folks from my past. But I do have to give a special shout out to my challenger. My challenger's name is Christian. And I mentioned in the book that you need a good European to help as a challenger, and Christian is Danish. And he and I have regular conversations, and he is someone who is very good at just going, I don't understand exactly what you think you're saying, but this is what I hear, and I don't think that's what you mean to. And so Christian's been awesome at being able to help me to rethink in the ways that I do, and in ways that I've found, no offense to my American friends, but he's just very direct in a way that is endearing from a European standpoint. And he's been a great challenge for me, ideas and long-held beliefs. And even sometimes I like to think that I hold strong opinions loosely. So I'll come off with this is how I feel. But if somebody's able to provide a cogent argument, then I can be swayed off of that. He's good at being able to knock my strong opinions around a little bit so I can let go of them. So he's my challenger. My supporter, very much I see as my brother and my mom both play that role as supporters for me. My brother, especially over the last several years, has been phenomenal to be someone who I know that I can have the kinds of conversations that you have with a good brother. about growing up, and about this is how I see the world, and this is the house that I grew up in. Did you grow up in the same house? And just sort of the implicit and sometimes explicit understanding of what one is going through. So that's my supporter. And then I have many different mentors depending on what direction I'm headed in.
Mm.
So that's why in the book I talk about 5 archetypes rather than 5 people, because any one of these archetypes can be filled by one or multiple people, and a person can fill multiple archetypes for you.
Any benefits to having fewer, tighter people in roles versus more spread out in many looser connections? Loose ties?
Now
Is
we're
that
now
what we're talking about?
You mean weak ties and strong
Weak
ties?
ties. Yeah.
So it is definitely an art to understanding how few is too few and how many is too many. And I think that it goes into, I'm going to give a plug to Marissa King, who wrote a book called Social Chemistry, which is all about how humans connect. And she talks about 3 different archetypes of networks. One of the archetypes is the conveners. And a convener networker when all the people that they know each other. So if you were to draw a diagram of their network, almost all the dots would be connected to each other. Because if I'm a convener, all my friends know each other, and the benefits of that is it's a very high trust environment. We all know each other, therefore we can fail in front of each other. We're really good supporters of each other, but it's also very insular. There's not a whole lot that comes in from the outside, and we keep the bar really high for joining our convener network because that trust is so it's got the positives and the negatives. Then you have your expansionists, and your expansionists are the ones who are who basically, if we were walking around with Rolodexes, you'd be able to see they were hugely thick. And these are the people, when you walk into a networking event, they're the ones who salivate because they cannot wait to meet everybody. And they have very thin connections to a whole lot of people. And all of us go through this phase of being an expansionist, like when we start a new job or we move from one place to another, where we're trying to assess who is it that we want to have a deeper relationship with. But this expansionist is somebody who has a whole lot of connections and they aren't really connected. And so the positives are they know a lot of folks, but the negatives are that the relationships are really thin and it takes a lot of energy to keep those connections up, because every single one of those connections requires attention. And so they're run ragged. They may salivate at it. They may be very externally strengthened by having being an extrovert, but their expansionist networks would be good to be connected to. It's like they'd be great to have as a connector in your archetype, but I don't know that I personally would want to be an expansionist, but I know some awesome ones. And then the last one are the brokers. So the third type is the broker. And the broker is sort of, think of somebody who is a connector between networks of folks. So I get the benefits of an expansionist in that I can reach out to a whole bunch of people because I'm connected to networks of folks. And I get the inputs from external that the conveners don't, because my networks are so broad. And so each of us at some point in time are an expansionist, a broker, or a convener. And that then, depending on what we need to do, that then speaks to, do you want to have archetype that is only 3 people covering all 5? Do you want to have 10 who are doing it quasi, a little shift over one or another? It really depends on what you're trying to do with your inner circle.
Yeah, and like with most things, it's about kind of finding your blend, right? It's kind of what I've picked up on, right?
Yes, finding your blend and knowing what's appropriate for the circumstance you're in, and not being afraid to try. Is this an expansionist play or is this a brokerage play?
Yeah. So I have to ask, what came first, the inner circle model or your experience coming out of the valley through connecting with the people and sort of realizing, oh, I think I did this thing. And maybe you can't separate the two from one another, which is okay too.
Yeah, I would not feel comfortable claiming ownership over the inner circle effect. I think that if you, it's sort of it's something where you grok it, and you sort of got to put a name on it. And there's this phenomenon that I'm sensing, and it's interesting. After I actually published, then I went and I looked around and I saw, okay, are there other people who are talking about this using different words? And I think the concept of there being a certain number of archetypes is not new. It's a matter of what are those archetypes. So, what is necessary? Is it these five? Is it six? Is it eight? Is it 12? Is it three? But the notion of needing to rely on people other than yourself and how you can leverage them to achieve more than you can on your own, I don't think is something that's new. I mean, this is something I think anthropologically, it goes all the way back to tribes and clans and villages and all of that.
When you were getting started, and because you decided, hey, it's time to get going here, what
Mm-hmm.
helped you get started outside of the people around you?
Uh, let's see. That's an awfully good question. I have to take myself back. So therapy. Therapy helped me to realize I needed to poop or get off the pot. My therapist pointing out that we'd had a similar conversation for a couple months now, and there was one way to make that change. Um,
Can I jump in there?
yeah,
What what was that conversation? Was it you had expressed multiple times that you wanted to go write this book, or that you had this idea for something? What was the recurring conversation that you were having?
the recurring conversation was, I think it was being the recurring conversation was, I know that if I just read this next thing, or if I take this class that's coming up, then I'll have what I need. And you can play that game until you're 6 feet under. There's always, especially now that we have the explosion of information and the explosion of all kinds of continued learning coaches. I think that's a that's something that I'm conscious of now that I've actually written something, and I'm on the other side of the equation of I've got something to share with you. Do I need to monetize that? It's odd because this I don't know if I'm alone in this or in a minority or in the majority, but it changed the way that I actually seek input from other people. Because now that I've monetized, or have the potential to monetize something that I've learned, how much do I give away versus I say, well, there's a book about this.
Mm.
And because I'm not using this to pay my bills, I'm using it to, what am I using it for? I guess donuts every other Saturday. Because it's at that level of royalties, then it's not how I'm making money, but I'm conscious of, and what I do in my weekly newsletter is that I dig into the book and I share more concepts of the book, because the book was sort of the, oh yeah, I can say, hey, I'm an author. Wow, I finally am an author, and now I can talk about this thing that I wrote, and I can share this with people, and I'm the one who gets to decide how I share it. Do I share it for free? Do I ask people to buy the damn book? But I'm also conscious of when I reach out to other people and say, hey, I need some help thinking through this. Do I have to offer to pay? Or is this a
Mm.
social capital thing? That's the algorithm that I have to run in my own brain around reaching out to folks now. And I hadn't thought about that before I actually wrote something.
Fascinating. Yeah, I understand what you're saying for sure, and could see how it definitely might change that. But I also am thinking about some stuff that you said earlier. Is like these
Mm-hmm.
people are in your lives for a reason, and
Yes.
I'd like to think that if people expected you to pay them for something, that they would just be direct and tell you. And then if they're indirect about it and are going to
Mm-hmm.
hold a grudge against you, do you
Uh-huh.
really want that person in your life anymore?
Yeah. I would say yes and. So the yes and part is that when I actually receive something of value, I want to be able to reciprocate. So if you give me an insight that's going to help me to, let's say, sell more books, then I want to be able to say, hey, Adam, that was amazing. Thank you. Here's how do I reciprocate? Do you just hold that chit for me? Do I hold that chit and remember, oh, I need to do something for Adam? I don't know. But the beautiful part of this wonder is versus the wonder of being in that valley is this wonder is, wow, we've created value together. The world is a better place for what we've done. And we can just go ahead and be okay with that. And that's a good pause to have is the world's better because we did something together.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great framing and seems like a helpful mindset. I would say as a sample size of one, if at any point in time you came to me and we were just riffing on something and next thing you know, you're like, hey, by the way, I decided like this thing that we just talked about, I'm going to go do something with it. I'd be like, awesome. Great. How can I help? I would just want to know how I could help make you more successful. Like at some point in time, I think I wrote in my journal that, you know, my dream would just be to make as many of my friends as wildly successful as humanly possible, because I believe that if I could have any impact on that becoming a reality, that I know that would come back to me. I think that that's my belief in the world.
Do you think that makes us peculiar? So sharing that same belief, do you think that makes us a very peculiar minority, or do you think that there are more people actually believe that, but they haven't had a chance to share it broadly?
I think there are more people that believe that. I think one of the challenges is that most of culture and society and the stuff that we see on a regular basis shows a different picture of success, a picture of success that is more taking advantage of and extracting as much value as you can, whether it's a company or from the environment or from other people. And I believe that we're in the middle of a shift, though, of people starting to talk about things, sustainability, about doing things collectively. And just to be clear for anybody who might be listening, like I'm not talking about we're going down a socialist communist path here. I just mean two people who want to help and support each other are going to go do it on their own because they believe that that's the best path forward for us all together. I'd like to believe that that's where we're heading.
I wonder if the democratization of the ability to do micropayments and those kinds of things has tripped up this benevolence that we're talking about. So the fact that it's easy for people to exchange money now, instead of having to send a check through the mail or see you and hand you cash, because we're able to do things in such a virtual way of exchanging dinero, that has somehow polluted this space that we're in. But I find that I surround myself with people like you, who are ready and willing and able to chip in, because they come into a connection with this. I'm going to bring value here first, and the idea of extracting value from it is a distant future thought, if it's there at all. It's that notion of 1 + 1 = 3, that we can create more value doing something together than we could on our own. So let's do it.
Yeah. I would also like to believe that I'm surrounding myself with people who, all of me's, who also believe that. And there's just other stuff going on as well. Like I would say on the whole, people have a hard time asking for a value exchange when they very well could say, hey, you know what, my time actually is valuable and I am an expert on this topic. And so it would be great if you paid me, or I would expect you to pay me for it. Or, hey, we've been working on this for a while, or you just went and built this thing off of something that we made together. And on the one hand, I think there's a lot of faith that you can place in your trusted network of people that you're probably more likely doing this stuff with, so that, yeah, if somebody does go off and do something, they'd say, hey, I'd love to compensate you for your help along the way. And there's also a whole other skill set of setting boundaries that we're not really taught growing up, is like, how do you effectively set a boundary? So that you can say, you know what, I think we're going a little bit past what I'm willing to just do because I like you and I'm happy to volunteer. Like, I'm not going to go build in my case, a lot of people come to me for marketing stuff. And what's challenging for me is that I like it and it's easy and it's natural. And so I'm just like, yeah. But what I've caught myself is that I volunteer that ability all the time. And then I end up not having any space for my own projects. And so I've just got to a point where having more confidence to say, hey, I can help you do X. And so set a little bit of a
Hmm.
boundary so that it makes it clear. And like, hey, if you want more, we can talk about what that looks like.
Yeah. Oh, that boundary thing. That is, I think that that's a class that we should all be taught in high school and in college and in our first and second and third jobs. Is this whole boundary setting thing. And I touch on it a little bit in the book when I talk about identifying the people that shouldn't be in your inner circle anymore. I mean, when you do this assessment, when you do this audit of who are the people that I've surrounded myself by, and if you're feeling stuck being surrounded by those folks, something's got to change. And typically, it is a person that you realize is sucking the energy out of the inner circle, and you have to set that boundary to say, where I want to be doesn't include that person being in my circle. And it's not I'm going to march up to them and like you see in the forums, I'm not going to post here again. I'm quitting this. It's just like, just go away. It's kind of the same thing with the inner circle of if there's somebody that shouldn't be there, you don't walk up and say, I'm kicking you out. You just begin to route around them. But understanding that you're making a conscious choice of moving away from that person to move into a better space with different people. And sometimes that is really hard to come to terms with the fact that, wow, I invested 15 years in this person, and I'm realizing that I can't keep them close to me if I'm going to achieve what I need to achieve. That's a hard thing to come to terms with internally, and then it's even harder to execute.
When I got to that part of the book, that was the part that got me, because it's something that
Mm,
I've thought about many times recently, where I'm like, oof, there are some
yeah,
people that it's time to move on from. And I'm so glad you shared what you just said, because it's not like you got to go up to that person and tell them, hey, it's been really great. I've really enjoyed these last 15 years, but like, you just don't have a seat in the
yeah,
car anymore on
hmm
this ride that we're on. You just can fade them out in a way that feels
hmm
good and natural.
yeah,
And what I found scariest, though, as I was going through that, or the part that
hmm
made me uncomfortable, scary is maybe a little bit too aggressive, but the most uncomfortable is,
hmm
well, then what if I haven't replaced them yet? Like, what do I do then? Is it just me? Am I just going to be alone?
yes, you are.
But don't leave me alone with myself.
I know that's so hard, but that is something that's. I mean, it is a sign of emotional maturity to be able to let go of someone without a hot swap in place, and to detach from someone, to not reattach to someone new right away, but to detach from someone and to attach to yourself until the right person comes along, and then consciously attach, making a choice rather than feeling that emptiness and wanting to fill it up. And that sort of, yeah, that's hard to do as well. But I think that in my first half century on this earth, one of the things that I'm grateful for is that I believe I have eventually come to be able to love people that are no longer in my life, and
Mm.
not resent them for not being in my life, or resent them for the reason that they're not in my life, but just realize that I loved them at one point and I love them today. But that doesn't mean that they're around me. But I can still love them all the same for who they helped me to become, knowingly or unknowingly. I am who I am today because they loved me at one point and I loved them. And that's a beautiful thing. I wish I could have known that 30, 20, 10, 5 years ago. But here I am today. It takes me a long time, as we've already talked about, to be able to learn things and know.
I recently had that experience with, yeah, a handful of people, and I couldn't even put my finger on exactly
Mm-hmm.
what caused it. It just sort of, one day I was thinking about that person and decided that I think this is what it was, that it was taking so much more of my energy to be upset and angry and have that resentment or whatever the emotion was at the time that I was feeling it. Instead, just be grateful that that experience was there and I had the chance to learn what I learned from
Mm-hmm.
it. And it's got me, to this point in time, and sort of being able to flip that switch. I agree is massive. I think the thing that you just said that really stood out to me, though, is the powerful place that you can come from when your first point of connection and grounding is with yourself.
Yeah.
And can you point to anything that's helped you get there besides all those audiobooks?
Besides the audiobooks and despair and no. It's trite, and I say it's trite because I've just seen it in so many little Insta posts. But the notion that no one is coming to save you, and when that hits home, that nobody is coming to save you, and you have to manufacture your own happiness, contentment, peace, all of that. No amount of external pouring into your cup is going to fill you up if you don't plug the hole first. And I think that that's really the understanding that it's not going to come from the outside. I have to start it on the inside, and people will gladly, actually, I don't say they'll gladly start. They will gladly continue to fill my cup, and will finally be smiling that the hole has been plugged and they can actually see it starting to fill rather than just pouring shit in and seeing it dribble out, and loving me so much that they're not going to say, dude, just plug the hole. I don't know if that answered the question, but that was the realization that I had, is that you got to plug your own hole. It's got to be, you have to have the spark from within, and the fuel is out there.
It makes me think of another piece of advice that is seemingly everywhere, which is like, you got to fill your cup back up. You got to fill your cup first. But nobody talks about the fact that like your cup might just be full of holes, and that you need to plug the holes first before you pour a bunch more water in. Or, maybe. I mean, worse yet, hot coffee, and then you just burn your hand. Like, that sounds terrible. Nobody ever talks about what liquid we're pouring into our cup.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, maybe we should write a book about filling the holes in our cups. Mm-hmm.
There you go. Collaboration.
Yay. I like it. But yeah, so there, that notion of understanding that, that we need to, take agency of where we want to steer the ship. And when we can, I think that's, you're bringing up some great connections for me in my brain, and I'll try and share them. The connections of the looking for, it's in a book somewhere or it's in a class somewhere. I was looking for someone to help to guide me where I wanted to go, by pulling me there. And as soon as they stopped pulling, I was dead in the water. But my actually taking agency of and wanting to steer my ship towards a particular point, I think that was it. And I struggled for a couple years before finally settling on this focus area of connecting with people, reconnecting with our old and cold connections. It took me a long time, of all the different things I could talk about or had experienced and wanted to share, finally arriving at that. I think that finally got me to put oars in the water and start going in one direction.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. There's the longer you go in your career, I think for most people, there becomes more and more things that you could put your stake in the ground for.
Yeah.
And, in some senses that feels good because you can just go try a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and then eventually you get bored of it.
Yeah. Yes. Eventually.
When going back to the people, and I got to that part in the book of like, okay, I need to go round out my inner circle again. What if you look around who you think is in your network right now, and you're like, I don't know if this person's in my circle right now. How do you get that started?
How do you get that started to actually get them into the circle, or identify someone that you want to bring into your circle?
Let's say that you've identified that person.
Yeah, so I firmly believe that anybody who's going to be in your inner circle is going to resonate in the same wavelength that you do. So if you approach somebody to say, hey, there's this inner circle concept that I don't know if you've heard about, but it's this notion of harnessing the power of your closest connections. And there is, I'm realizing when I did an assessment of the people that I have around me, I have a deficit in, I'll call it the challenger archetype in my inner circle. I have people who love me and support me and push me and are a couple steps ahead of me where I want to go. But I don't really feel like I've got anybody who's just going to call my bullshit. And I respect the fact that you are that way with so many people. And it's going to be hard for me, I think, to hear it so directly from you, but I need that. And I'd be honored if you would help me with that. You up for it? That's one way.
Just see what happens.
See what happens. And if they say no, well, awesome. Go on to the next one. Yeah. You turned me on to the $1 Million Weekend book, and the notion of raising your ability to hear the no as an answer, or your tolerance for being able to do that. And that's been really meaningful to me in the last month since I read the book and dove into it, was not taking away someone's ability to say no. Ask them, because the worst that'll happen is they say no. The best that'll happen is you'll get what you ask for. And as someone who was very anxious about being rejected, it took a while to get on the other side of screwing up the courage to do that time and again. But you know what? I haven't died, and I've heard no more in the last few weeks than I ever anticipated I would. And I'll keep on at it, because there's a yes in there somewhere.
So one of those exercises, we'll link to the book in the show notes, is to go to your favorite coffee shop or Starbucks and ask for 10% off. Thomas, you went and did that exercise. Have you done it since the first time?
I have not done the coffee exercise, because I thought that was the breaking the ice, the breaking the wrapper. And once you're through the wrapper, then you'll ask for other things. But maybe it would be worth revisiting that this weekend at a coffee shop, going out. I brew a lot of my own, so I don't actually go out for coffee much, but I do remember going to Pete's, and I do remember just how anxious I got as it was about to be my turn to order. And I think that if I'd walked in and there was nobody at the register, I would have been able to breeze right up and do it and be done. But because there were 3 people in front of me and I had that anticipation of being rejected, it was a lot more painful than it could have been. But you know what? I didn't get my 10% off. I also didn't die. So, So
sometimes it feels just as scary to go ask for 10% off as it does to, I don't know, whatever the equivalent is. Maybe you just gotta up the ante, right? Like next time you go to a Sharks game, 10% off. Next time you go out to dinner, 10% off. Go buy a house. I need 10% off of this house. Does that work? I think it does.
Sure. It's in the same vein. Why not? I'd ask for Sharks win before 10% off this season. But, yeah. Ouch.
Mm-hmm. All right. So one of the I got a couple more things left for us. One of them is this concept of how your inner circle seeps into your subconsciousness. Will you talk about kind of that phenomenon and process a little bit?
The mimetic desire, that part of it. So, yeah. So, I was really fascinated to realize that there was a sociological phenomenon called the mimetic desire. So mimetic, thinking mime, mimicking someone else. And the notion is that just by being around people who are doing something, you have an outsized chance of doing that same thing. Back when iPhones were spreading like wildfire, when they weren't quite ubiquitous as they are today, one person in the office would get an iPhone, and then all of a sudden 2, and then 4, and then 8, and then people would look weird at you if you still had what were they back then, Blackberries or Androids, because it was just wow, everyone around me is doing this. I don't want to be left out. Well, that's in doing products, but it's also the same way around behaviors. So if someone in an office starts a diet, then the chances are that others will do the same, because that person who is on the diet will either look different, or they'll definitely be talking different about this wonderful diet they're on, because they're getting that dopamine hit without actually losing the weight. But that same kind of effect will percolate amongst those that are in close geographic proximity. So the same thing about the mimetic desire plays through in the way that we behave. So if I'm around someone, or not if I am around people who exercise more often than not. And that inspires me to exercise because, heck, they're doing it. I can do it too. It's nothing special. Versus if I'm around a lot of folks who just watch, who are just going to basically spend the next 4 weeks doing nothing but sitting on the couch and watching basketball, then chances are pretty strong I'm going to be watching a lot more basketball in my future if that's what the people around me are doing. But this is what I find as being something that we can actually leverage to our benefit, is identifying the kind of people who are doing the things that you want to do, and bringing them in close proximity to you, so that your default will be to lean in doing what they're doing rather than going in your old status quo ways.
Yeah, makes total sense. All right. I know what my homework's going to be, but I love to end these not with homework, because I think homework's boring, but with a great experiment. So we've talked about a lot of stuff that people could go and try, experiment, see if it fits. Will you give us an experiment to go try for the next week and see if it helps us unlock more of our potential?
Heck yes. So my experiment is one that I've been forcing myself through, and my experiment is to see what is the oldest and coldest connection I can reach out to and say hi to. And it's something where I've been taking it on the easy route. That's the oldest one that I've reached out to is 10 years old. But I know that I can reach out to folks, being at the advanced age that I am in my 50s. I can reach out to folks that are 20, 30, and I think I can reach out to some that are 40. So this is not people I'm related to, by the way. But people that I have worked with or hung, thank you. People that I've hung out with that I can reach out to and say hi, and spark that goodwill feeling. I'm fascinated by the psychological experiments of what happens when you reach out to an old and cold connection, and that as the one who reaches out, I tremendously discount the psychological uplift that happens from you receiving my outreach. It is just, they've seen time and time again, I, as the one who's contemplating reaching out to you, discount how good you're going to feel hearing from me. And that's something I don't even take into consideration, is the benefit that you're going to get from experiencing that little bit of nostalgia, or that little bit of, oh yeah, I remember that. It was so much fun to work with him. I don't take that into consideration as I'm contemplating reaching out to you again. And so I have yet, I'm up to 20 connections that I reached out to again. I have yet to find someone who hasn't responded to say, yes, would love to. When can we? So to a person, they've all responded to me. I haven't had a single ghost. I haven't had a single anything like that. And so the experiment I would ask folks to run is to work your way up to reaching out to someone that it's been at least half your life since you contacted.
Okay.
And
all
I
right.
guarantee that you will have a huge uplift on your own memories of the amazing things that happened with these people. And you'll all of a sudden be in contact with someone who has your best interests at heart, and is an awesome way to expand your own network, because you can ask them for referrals of, do you know somebody who does X, Y, or Z? They are a weak tie. They are someone you haven't spoken to in a very long time, and they've gone off and lived a life that you don't really know much about. And they may be that missing link that you need to fill in your inner circle, or find that new job, or find a tutor for your kid, or what have you. So that's my experiment.
I love it. It makes me think about, well, first off, I'm thinking about there's so many people I think that I could reach out to that definitely fall into that category. And so I'm like, what exactly would I be reaching out about? Do you have any tips on that? It's like, okay, great. I thought of somebody. What, am I just reaching out to say hello?
You're reaching out to say hello. So I challenge you to find anyone who wouldn't smile at seeing an email that says, I was just thinking about you and remembering how much fun we had doing X, or the good things that we did doing Y. Just wanted to let you know, hope you're well. It's not can we set up coffee, or can we invest in this? It's just that ping that it could be even unrequited, that they're not going to reply back, but you know that they received it and had that brightness. And think about, it's kind of like gift giving. You celebrate the fact that you are being generous, and we get such a high from our generosity, and that's not to speak of the recipient and what their reaction is. We get that. We are pro-social people, and we need to act more like it by reaching out and being pro-social and being spreading the joy that we have.
Beautiful. All right. I know exactly what I'm going to go and do now. This is going to be a fun experiment. It also fits nicely with the other one that I'm trying to do more and more right now, which is just reach out and express gratitude. Hey, just came across this, really appreciate it. Thank you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people I've never met before. I sent one to Brene Brown yesterday.
Awesome.
Maybe I'll hear back from her. Maybe I won't. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully she got it, and her assistant or whoever told her that I was thinking about her. So yeah, I got a handful of people who I do legitimately know, and even thinking about this right now, I feel good. Now I'm still going to go do the exercise, but I'd be curious, everybody else, like just thinking about reaching out to these people, doesn't that feel good? It's pretty cool.
Yes, and once you do one, it's so easy to do all the others.
Yeah.
Once you get that one,
I was going to edit this podcast tonight, but I guess not. I'm just going to go send emails to my high school photography teacher.
There you go. I like that. I'll let you do this unedited if you guarantee that you'll do that. Or actually, no, do both of them.
There's very, very little editing happening on these podcasts, except for that thing that I just said. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, with that, thank you for the experiment. Thank you for spending time with us today. People can go on Amazon and buy your book, The Inner Circle Effect. Yes. And where else can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. And you can also, I would love to have more subscribers to my newsletter. It's called The Network Wrangler. And if you go to my LinkedIn, you'll see that there is a link to be able to subscribe to it there. I'm not sure if I have enough Google juice yet to actually have people find The Network Wrangler in my subscription page. But find me on LinkedIn. You'll see the link right there. And we can put it in the show notes, can't we?
We will put them all down in the show notes as these podcasters do these days. So thanks again for being here with me, Thomas.
My pleasure. It's always great to spend time with you, Adam.
Thank you so much for tuning in today on this episode of The Adam Experiment. If you're enjoying this episode and want more, I'm sure you figured out by now how to subscribe to this podcast. Would love to have you along. Of course, your review would also mean the world to me. If you're interested in hearing more about the topics related to how we can unlock and unleash our ultimate potential, then I definitely recommend you stop by adamexperiment.com to go and sign up. There's a newsletter that goes out multiple times per week. It's also where you'll get the latest and greatest on the podcast and where I share some of my personal stories, my personal experiments, and other learnings throughout the week for you to follow along and hopefully find some things that you can experiment with on your own. Thanks again for tuning in today. I hope you have an incredible day and look forward to having you back next time on The Adam Experiment.